All right, Kate has hit record. And in that note, I am extremely emotional because I want to say good evening to our Semester at Sea community. Thank you for joining us in our latest installment of the Wavelengths Alumni Series. This online series highlights the talents of our SAS alumni around the world. We feature an alum from different industries, different careers, every other Wednesday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is a time that I'm not used to because Christian and I both know we're from Texas, but now I currently live in New York City, and we feature it here on our Facebook page. So my name is Angeline Superable. I had the pleasure of sailing with Christian back in 2016, 2017, and I'm currently working as Mayor Bill de Blasio's Deputy Press Secretary and Communications Advisor here in New York City. But more importantly, tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with Christian Lowe, someone who I admire, who I look up towards, and who inspires me on a daily basis. So thanks for letting me be a part of this conversation. Even though I get super sappy, and this is just the beginning of it, right, Christian? You know that I'm a crying person, so get ready. Christian is the founder of the Green Book Project, and that's something we're going to be talking about tonight amongst a lot of different other things that we've had the pleasure of sharing throughout the years since I've known you on Semester at Sea. But I want to give you some space to introduce yourself. As I've said, Christian is an alumnus of the spring 2016 voyage of Semester at Sea. He is currently serving as the youth trustee of ISE, which is the Institute of Shipboard Education. It is as fancy as it sounds. Christian, I think every 3 or 4 months, is surrounded by a lot of fancy white people, but he's also asserting his privilege as like a very knowledgeable person of color, just like working in the industry, telling people how it is, and also showing up as himself. So I appreciate you. I want to give space to introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Wow, thank you so much for that introduction, Angeline. That I feel hyped up about myself now. Yeah. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time out to interview me this evening. I also am deeply honored to be speaking with you. Angeline, you're one of my best friends, and I absolutely love sailing together on the spring 2016 voyage. A bit about me, like Angeline said, we both grew up in Houston, Texas. I graduated from Texas A&M University with a degree in international studies. And a little bit about what brought me to becoming the founder of the Green Book Project is that in my college years, my experiences were shaped by things like working for human rights organizations in the US and Cusco, Peru, as well as serving as an impact scholar on Semester at Sea itself. So I am absolutely honored to be here today. And also, like I said, super, super happy to get to have a conversation with you tonight, Angeline.
Okay, I'm totally spoiled by getting to spend time with you tonight, but I want to hear a little bit more about Semester at Sea. So I feel like we can go through a lot of different phases in terms of like what brought you to Semester at Sea, because I don't think it's a natural course for you to go to like, I went to UC Berkeley, you went to Texas A&M. We both came from public colleges. It's not necessarily like the common thing for us to be like, well, I would like to have the sweet life in Zach and Cody life and travel the world a little bit, just know what's out there. But I want to hear a little bit more about what drew you to the program and what really brought you, like, what was the selling point for you? Oh, I can't get this experience anywhere else. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I have to say that I am very much a sucker for online advertising. Like if you want to figure out like a test group, I'm the person to go to. Because I actually like learned about Semester at Sea for the first time through an ad on Chegg. I was procrastinating very hard, very hard.
I love that.
Yeah, I was procrastinating so hard on buying a textbook that was like something dollars. Didn't want to buy it. Saw this ad for Semester at Sea. I was like, "What's that? That looks kind of cool." And I clicked on it, and it brought me to this page, and it just talked about the history of Semester at Sea. And I was absolutely floored. There was this like the fact that there's this program that exists that takes students across the world, visiting all these different ports, meeting all these different cultures and people, And the idea that I could like do that myself, especially as an international studies major, was
Totally.
absolutely, yeah, it was just absolutely awe inspiring. And you know, when I first mentioned it to my parents, they were like, say what? Like you're gonna you're gonna get on a ship, and yeah, it's a cruise ship, and are you actually gonna study? You know, like I don't know about all of this. Like I want you to keep good grades, but I read about it and I just knew that this was something I had to do, and I felt like if I left college and I didn't sail on semester at sea, I would have like felt like didn't have the experience that I set out to have.
Can I ask
And
you
that,
something like really, really? So I interrupted you
no
clearly, and
worries.
so my rain is like hitting my air conditioning unit behind me. So please forgive me. Um, but Christian, you're a first generation immigrant, right? I feel like this is something that we connected with early on.
Second generation, I think technically.
I feel like this is a really topic. Did your parents immigrate here to the U.S. and then you were born here in the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. According to my law school applications and beyond, we do not know what first generation versus second generation is. But I will say, one of the pressures that I felt as someone who identifies as first generation, who had parents who moved to the US, and then I was born here, then raised here, is something like study abroad didn't necessarily make sense for me. Especially even if I was someone who was studying, I studied political science with an emphasis in international relations. And I know you were an international relations major at A&M. So like one of the things that I'm thinking about is how do folks who are considering this considering this as part of their college trajectory, how do they then venture to have that conversation with their parents saying like this might be something that's meaningful to me? How did you have that conversation?
It was a little bit hard, you know,
Of course,
especially when you bring up the tuition numbers a little bit.
it's not cheap.
Absolutely. But I think, you know, I come from a background where education is just very highly valued. My both my mom and my dad have master's degrees. I'm very privileged in that way, and education. Like I'm a third generation, uh, college student, or I'm a third generation to have graduated from college. However, the tongue twister is. And so education was very valuable. It has always been very valuable in my family. And so I think for me, like I was able to really sell it because I was just able to communicate like this is an educational opportunity that I cannot get anywhere else. Like there's no other situation where I will be in Vietnam one week and be able to compare, you know,
Unreal.
yeah, the inner workings and the day-to-day life of someone in Ho Chi Minh City with, you know, the day-to-day life of someone in Cape Town, South Africa. That's not an experience that I can have anywhere else, and nowhere else will I get to be on a ship with 500 other college students and professors and teachers who are going to also have had different experiences that I can really sit down with and talk about. And one thing that I ended up really specifically saying to my parents, I still remember this moment, was at that time, the semester at sea academic sponsor was, I believe, the University of Virginia.
Yeah,
Um,
baby.
and
I remember that was a selling point for me, so continue.
right, yeah, okay, I wasn't sure if it was just me, but that part was a kind of a big deal because there was this part about semester C being sort of an academic village, where you're kind of having both these experiences as a college student, but you're also getting to sit and eat and dine, and have like wild travel experiences with your professors. And I remember telling my parents about that, and they were like, okay, we'll try to see. Yeah, we'll try to see if we can make it work.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
No, it's so funny. And I think like I get a little teary-eyed thinking about like all of the incredible experiences that we've both gotten to share, but also that we've like the relationships that we've been able to build with admin across all different like studies that we've experienced, right? Like some things, like I'm remembering Professor Maria and Professor Dong Wang, and in particular, someone that we shared, Professor Rick Mays,
Yeah.
right? Like international public policy, and he was from the University of Richmond. I was just like, never heard of the University of Richmond. No shade to University of Richmond, but like literally, I still think back on my career and like Professor Rick Mays is like one of the best people that I've ever been able to encounter. But also being able to start to break down like what is this academic process in which like people become academic sponsors of semester
Mm.
at sea, but also who are the professors that get put in front of us. And I
Yeah.
feel like actually one of the biggest connections that you and I were able to make was in this classroom for
Yeah.
Rick Mays. And so I want to hear a little bit about that, and I want to hear a little bit about your experience like doing service with Kranti. I'm not pronouncing it correctly.
Kranti.
Kranti. But you're going to correct me, and I want to hear a little bit about both like the academic experience, but also the service-based experience that you're able to have on semester. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yes, I still remember. I think we met in Rick May's class. Like I think that might have been our
And
first
I was
conversation.
like, Christian, I'm going to be friends with you, but continue.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many great memories. Yeah, that
But oh my God, we have to give all the praise to all of our friends in that classroom. Who do we have? Well, first of all, Catherine Lehman, not
oh
in that
yes.
classroom, but told me I absolutely have to be friends with Christian.
I remember Catherine.
Best people ever. Who else? Who else am I missing?
Um, uh, oh, Sneha was in that class as well.
Sneha, she's so
Yes.
incredible. Oh my God, Sneha. She's doing like a really incredible job right now. I think in the
Amazing
history.
things. Yeah. Yeah, that class was one of those classes that I think when you go through college, you probably go through like what 30, 40, 50 different classes in your time, depending on the length of your program. But you don't, some of them kind of meld together. I think like I can say that
Oh my
honestly, some
God.
of them meld together.
Before we go forward, Peniel,
Oh yes,
one of the best people I've ever known in my life.
absolutely. I,
Okay, keep
I just talked with her last week actually.
going. Don't make me jealous. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and so when you're going through college, I think a lot of classes start to sort of meld together. And there's I don't really remember my math classes that I took my sophomore year of college, but Rick Mays' course was one that I really remembered because I felt like it gave us so many opportunities to both share our experiences and learn from each other's experiences. A lot of courses that you take in college are lecture based, or really just dominated. The discussions really dominated by one or two people. And I felt like the class really worked in a way in which I felt like I was heard, space was made for me to be heard, and also I got to hear from other people and about how these policies that we were studying around the world. A lot of the folks in our class were from other countries, and so I felt like one of the values I got from that class was like really seeing how the policies we were studying affected people's lives and how they felt about those policies, kind of being overarching in the ways that they had to go about their daily life. And I think that really brought a very human aspect of public policy to me, as an international relations major. Like you take politics courses and they're about these systems that are kind of like numbers and big sort of societal thoughts, but you don't often get to learn like, how does reproductive justice work for someone who is from India, or how does policies of like international development and U.S. aid actually affect people whose parents have businesses in Nigeria. And so I feel like for me that was one of the things I really loved about that course, was just really getting to feel that human aspect of international public policy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I want to dig in a little bit deeper into like what we were able to experience as a community in that classroom. Like I think at the end of the day, and you can speak on your own behalf at A&M, but I feel like some of the detriments of going to school at UC Berkeley is that we were always just learning from case studies. So we
Mm,
were learning from things that like people purported to have experienced during their time as like researching or analyzing
yeah.
this case study. But when it came to it, like I remember so specifically that we were coming up on India and we were talking about like what does in vitro fertilization look like in India?
Mm,
And I remember like Professor Rick Mays in particular being willing to take like questions on the back deck as we were like maybe a little bit like a little bit like nauseous as we were
yeah.
trying to figure out like, oh, am I gonna make it to India to
Oh,
ask this
those were rough seas. Yeah.
right? They were not fun. I remember like both asking the question, well, Rick Mays, do you think I would be cut out to be a professor? To which he said no. But also like being like, what does this mean? And how can I ask this question effectively? And I feel like you are someone who constantly like questions their own privilege and is willing to make space to ask hard questions. How did you feel like you were supported or not supported in the semester at sea community to ask those questions of yourself and others?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, semester at sea, I think made me realize so that I had so many privileges. I
Or
think, I'm a Black person that grew up in the US, particularly in the South. And there are certain experiences that you're going to experience as a Black person in the South when it comes to discrimination and marginalization that really shaped, how I thought about the world and how I saw myself in it. And so taking my experience from semester at sea or from my daily life, when I was even going on semester at sea, I had this kind of worry like, am I gonna go to another country and like face like a ton of racism, or will I be the only person aboard the ship um, that's Black? And will I have to worry that like people are gonna see me as this kind of other, aboard the ship?
right.
Um, and I think what really struck me on semester C was that there were so many instances where I came to face with my privilege because I saw how situations turned out for people who were less privileged than myself. And so, I'd be in a particular country, and I might have people like come over to me and try to take pictures with me, or in one case, give me free food at a place just because I'm Black and I'm American. And I've had some people say things like Obama, like
Oh
here's a
my
bowl
gosh.
of pho. And so I came face to face with my privilege in so many ways because I often saw how my friends who identify as women, or who identify as queer, were not given those same um, treatment like that, and it really kind of made me come face to face with it. At the same time, there were instances where I had to where I felt in certain ways out of place, being in a certain club or group because I might be the only Black person in that group. Semester C it does have tend to have like skew more towards having more white students than any other
White
group.
and female. We talked about
Oh yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think on our voyage there were about 15 of us who were Black or African American, and so like for me that was one of that core group of us, and I think we actually joined together with a bunch of other groups to create Diversity Inclusion Club, which is another place where we were both together.
Yeah,
um,
sure.
and I had and like those all of those experiences really just kept bringing me face to face with how other people's identities affected their lives. And I remember one specific conversation I had with a friend of mine who is who identified as bisexual, and him talking about how he had to worry about people just trying to like fight him because of the fact that he showed affection for someone who was of the same gender as himself. And it just really had forced me to be in a situation where I was oftentimes the most privileged person in a room or in a
Yeah.
location. And I think that I don't know I would have had and realized I was having that experience if not for our voyage.
It's tough. Well, I think at the end of the day, and I say this to your own credit, that Christian, you've always been someone who is willing to interrogate their own privilege And I think you've done that in the like support of others trying to figure out where we stand. And I think that's a really tough thing. Like at the end of the day, like folks who are watching this recording, like Christian and I are in our mid 20s, and at the end of the day, like lots of people think, especially when you're like entering the last few years of your college, like everybody thinks like you got it all figured out, and that's not actually the truth, right? We're like at the very beginning of figuring out what our identity means to us. And I want to give you space to talk about the Green Book Project, which is really this one of the most inventive and creative and thoughtful things that has. I truly mean that. I don't mean to butter you up. Like that is truly one of the most inventive and thoughtful things that has come from Semester at Sea, because I think a lot of the questions that we get to ask when we are voyagers is like who gets access to what and for what reasons. And
Absolutely.
I think like especially like Christian and I have identified early on that we have different privileges that make us privy to the conversations that we get to be in, whether it be the class that we're taking, whether it be the relationships that we have before having the conversation in the first place. A lot of things lead us up into being able to be authoritative figures in that conversation. And what I really love about you, Christian, amongst a lot of other things, is that you created a space for yourself to become an authoritative figure in the Green Book Project. And I am curious to hear about that. Like, I do want to give a quick shout out to Victor Luftig, who is like one of the most incredible, like just like mentors that I've ever experienced. John Timmons, like Lisa and Mark Burney, like
Yes.
all of these people, like, not gonna lie. Yeah, white people can be very damaging, and we're gonna name that outright. But they can be kind of hurtful. They can be like they can erase culture and history. But these folks kind of always made it like accessible for us to express our feelings and to express injustice. And to that end, I say thank you, and thank you
Absolutely.
for being there for us as young people in our 20s trying to figure out what we mean and what we say. They have always been supportive. So thank you for being that.
Yes.
But Christian, I want to give the floor to you and say the Green Book Project is an absolute revolution. How did you come up with it?
Absolutely. So the catalyst for the Green Book Project was actually Semester at Sea as well.
Of course.
That's another plug for anyone
Of
considering
course.
going on a voyage. It will change your life. It will change how you do things.
Yes.
You will. It has changed mine. But yeah, the Semester at Sea was the catalyst for the Green Book Project, and very particularly one specific field program I did in Mumbai, India. It was actually an impact program offered through Semester at Sea, and which was partially paid for by the Impact Scholars scholarship that I was privileged to have been awarded. And the Kranti House is this safe house located in Mumbai that is specifically meant to house young women who grew up in Mumbai's red light district. And for those of you who might not know about what that entails, it meant that a lot of the young women came from backgrounds where they faced gender-based and sexual violence, and were also further marginalized by different identities, whether it came to skin color or caste, or just socioeconomic class. And that sort of background was something that affected their lives all the time whenever they were outside of the Kranti House, from what I observed. And they were amazing people. like these young women were so amazing. They kept us safe, both when it came to getting on to Mumbai's trains, which are a very, very scary experience if you have never ridden a train that does not have doors on it. And they, just were so gracious as hosts for us while we were in their city. And the Green Book Project kind of was catalyzed by my experience there, because as I was there, was having this experience as, I'm a relatively large man, and I'm American, which the passport of having American privilege, of having American passport is massive when you're abroad. And I was able to sort of go places and be treated well,
Yeah.
just frankly well. And in those same places where we'd go, I saw people try to sexually harass the new friends we had made at the Cranty House. I saw people yell at them for being out of where they're not supposed to be, in terms of not being in specific districts, and telling them to just leave the area, and even businesses like discriminating against them outright as if that was just okay. And I was deeply infuriated by the entire experience, both because these were my new friends, and I don't think anyone can watch their friends experience discrimination and not be affected by that. And also because some of their experiences reflected some of my own. Being a Black person that grew up in the South, I've had very bad experiences where people have threatened to kill me simply because I was walking, or I've been at businesses where they told me, I'm not going to serve you because you are Black. And I've been followed around stores and shops, and even searched by a security guard, despite the fact that I had stolen nothing and had given no reason for someone to think I had stolen something. And so I saw their experiences, and it reflected some of my own experiences in growing up in the US. And it was just absurd to me. Like, it hit me that this is absurd. And no one should have to go about their life and worry, will I be safe? Will people treat me like I am an equal? Will I be given the same service as others?
Yeah.
And so after leaving the Cranty House and getting back on board Semester C, or the MD World Odyssey, I ended up talking to one of my friends, Austin Joseph, actually.
I love
Austin.
Yeah. I'm literally gonna Facebook message him as soon as I'm just like, I'm very emotional
Do it.
now. Like, you're alive? Like, are you picking me up? Is everything okay? Do you need anything? But Austin is a very good human.
Amazing man. Yes, I love Austin to death. And I was asked him, I was like, hey, you work in tech, you have an internship at Google. Is Google doing something about this? And I sort of had this thought process in my brain. I don't know if you know remember that slogan, there's an app for that. And there was this process that came into my brain, was like, there's people have to worry about being discriminated against wherever they go. Surely there's an app for that. And we talked about it, and he was like, I've never heard of anything like that. And I was so frustrated by that answer, but I was like, okay, like that makes sense. And I ended up using some of my shipboard internet, and also doing like searches once I got off the ship later, trying to figure out, like, is there something like some website or app where we can like have a space where we don't have to worry about whether we'll feel safe when we're going somewhere. And there was nothing. And I just kept searching until I discovered that there was this old civil rights publication called the Green Book that was created to help African American travelers stay safe on America's roads during the time of segregation and Jim Crow. And I was like, we need this. We need something like this today. I need something like this today. And no one else is going to build it, so I should. And that was really how it started. And for folks who may not know what the Green Book Project is ahead of time, yes, absolutely. I'm so excited. This is like what I do every day.
Sorry, but I need everybody else to know what it is. Okay.
Yes. The Green Book Project is a mobile app that allows folks from marginalized groups to find inclusive businesses and avoid discrimination, and does this by allowing users to crowdsource reviews of the different locations they visit and share their experiences in those locations to let other users know what they will also be safe in there. Users can use these things called intersections, also known as hashtags, that that show sort of what their identities and backgrounds may be, so that users from similar backgrounds can filter reviews based on that. So as a Black person, I may search for reviews written by people who are Black to understand whether I, as another Black person, would also be safe there. And the whole purpose of this is to keep folks from any marginalized group safe. So if you're someone that has to worry about racism or misogyny or homophobia or ableism or transphobia, or you're a person that cares about your friends who do, then the Green Book Project was created for you.
Christian, I get very like teary-eyed when I get to hear you talk about the Green Book Project, because not only is it like thoughtful and creative in terms of like creating a space for people who don't normally belong in the spaces that we get to inhibit, right? Like I think that's something we've like tried to translate and communicate early on, is that we feel very fortunate to be in the places that we do as children of immigrants, as people who grew up in Texas. Like at the end of the day, we get to make a name for ourselves. But beyond that, you have created a platform in which people can feel welcome. And I want to hear from you a little bit more about what was that process like to interrogate spaces in which you feel welcome versus spaces in which you do not. And also being like, all right, I'm going to create this space and I don't give a flying F if it is a space that you identify with, but this is a space that I think is important to
Yeah, it was hard.
have. I can only imagine, to be clear.
Yeah, I think that is, if I had to pick a single word, it was hard. One, it is very difficult. Um, it's very difficult to take on something as big as, say, just bigotry and say,
Yeah,
we're going to solve for this problem.
absolutely.
And it's also, but it's also necessary because there have been a lot of points in my life where I was afraid that I would not be welcome or not be allowed to even be a patron at a particular business. There were times where I feared for my life because of real, clear, and present danger that was threatening me because of my Blackness. And so for me, when I realized that this is something that had to be created, that have to be done, it was hard, but also there was no other answer that I felt like I could come up with. And probably one of the biggest daunting tasks was the fact that I had no idea how to code when I first set
Oh,
out on
really?
doing it. I
You
had taken.
code?
I'm sorry.
I didn't know you didn't know how to code. That was like a
No
very
idea.
thing.
Yes,
That's
I had
wild to
no.
me because one of your first jobs out of graduating was coding.
Yes, yeah,
Did you teach yourself that in pursuit of creating a space in which like people of color could be more accepted in this environment?
yeah. So after I disembarked semester at sea, I graduated the following summer, and I was like, I have no idea how to make this thing, but no one else is doing it, so I guess I have to learn how to. And luckily, coding is a much more accessible than it used to be in the past. And I was just like, I will take some tutorials and see if I can make something small and maybe get someone else to help me in the future. But as I learned more and more about coding, it became something that I really started to feel passionate about, because I realized that it took coding and tech in general can be used to really improve people's lives.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a job at a really great company called change.org shortly after graduating from college, an online petitioning platform, and getting to code full time during my job there as a software engineer. And just for really the last, oh my gosh, it's been 5 years since we disembarked.
Don't
Since
say that to
the
me.
last,
That makes me hurt in my heart.
yeah. For the last 5 years since disembarking semester at sea, the Green Book Project has been the thing I've been working on. And I just recently published the app to the iOS App Store this previous fall. So it's just been a really hard process, learning all the things I needed to learn to make it happen. But I'm really proud of the journey and happy about all the things that I did learn. And I think it's given me a sort of confidence to know that I can take on new challenges as they come up. And I'm also just really proud because, the Green Book Project is growing each day. And I am just happy that something that I worked so tirelessly on, it was very much a nights and weekends kind of project. That something like that is helping people today in real life. It's just the most amazing feeling.
Well, I think, Christian, at the end of the day, like, you've always been someone who is able to both meld the, like, what is in front of you and what is affecting people nowadays, and also being a visionary in the sense, like, how can I look out for people in the future, right? Like, I think that's really important when it comes to the position in which you are in as the youth trustee and beyond, is you have to ask the question, what is affecting people and how can I solve against it?
Yeah.
And I think like something like the Green Book Project is extremely thoughtful and
Thank you.
extremely useful as people start to travel and figure out in their lives, where do they feel comfortable and where do they not?
Yes.
And I think you have been able to answer the question for a lot of people, where is it okay to feel comfortable?
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, that's a very hard question to answer, because it's easy to say, well, I had a good experience here, so it's probably good for everybody else.
Mm,
But it's a hard thing to answer saying, like, well, I might have had an uncomfortable experience here, but well, I might not be indicative of the whole island or the company or the people that I met there, whatever.
yes.
And for you to be able to dig your heels in a little in a way that is both respectful and reflective, and say, I don't think I take the experience that I had at face value, and I'm willing to like interrogate a little bit. Is that what it was supposed to be? I think you have made, like, you've been able to force a wedge to be like, okay, what else is there? And what questions can I ask of the people who might be responsible to this community? So
Absolutely.
on behalf of other people of color and other, like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I have expressed this already, but I feel really privileged to have gotten to share a journey with you, whether it be semester at sea and otherwise. I mean, folks who are just getting to see this video at the first time, I totally enticed Christian to talk to me about his semester at sea experience over pizza many a times, mostly because we share the hometown of Texas. But Christian, you're a really an incredible guy who is willing to talk both about your emotions, but also about the logistics that gets people to move. And so I just want to thank you for that. And I also know that, like, what hour is like far too short to grant you any sort of expression as the change that you have created for our community over the past few years. But I know in specific that of we haven't gotten a lot of ability to talk about the Cape Coast Castle. I wanted to hear if there was anything that you wanted to share about your experience visiting Ghana and other countries like it, and also just to see if you have any parting messages for folks who are interested in the semester at sea and otherwise.
Absolutely. Also, thank you so much for the kind words.
Love
You
you.
are,
You
as
got
always,
spoiled. I just like
too
you make
nice.
me feel. I just like, come on, guys. If people don't know, I very much ultimately pressured Christian to being the youth trustee after me, because I was like, look, Christian, you're way smarter and way more talented than I could ever be. Can you please
No,
talk to
no,
people
no.
about how to make semester at sea better? You made my life easier. I think you're so special. But anyways, we're not talking about that. We're talking about you.
Well, like I said, thank you so much for the kind words. You're always too nice. But yeah, I would absolutely love to share about my experience. So For those who may not know, Cape Coast Castle is a location in Ghana, and it's a very important historical site because it is the location of a very prime slave trading post
Yeah.
for the transatlantic slave trade that carried somewhere in the range of 40 million Africans across the Atlantic into the New World. I'm sorry. And I was dreading going there from the moment I got on semester at sea. Not because I have anything against Ghana or against the Elmina region in Ghana, but I knew that what lied there was sorrow for me. But I also knew that it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up, getting to visit West Africa and being on semester at sea. And I believe we were actually together. I remember distinctly in my mind, you, me, and and Ray Blanford, I think. Those are three people that stick out in my mind that we've been together.
Continue to message him on like a monthly basis, being like, "Hey, I miss you," and he's like, "What?"
Oh, I need to hit Ray up.
I'm gonna snip this as like a GIF and be like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that you still exist in my mind." But yes, no, absolutely. We were on this slave coast trade on the Ivory Coast, and we were traveling as a group and being like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, and I just remember like skidding out of the van at the castle and like going off the street and getting inside these inside the walls of Cape Coast Castle.
Wow.
And I remember feeling this very strong emotion that I didn't really know what it was as we kind of walked forward and as we started to join the tour group that was forming. And I just was feeling this pressure almost in my chest. It felt like anxiety, but it also felt like anger and sadness. And I didn't really know what to make of it. And the tour guide led us through the castle and particularly led us to the entrance to the dungeons. And as we went into the dungeons, I almost felt like I couldn't breathe. And it wasn't because it was extremely hot or because
Which it was very hot.
yes, very, very hot. Or because, the dungeons themselves are very claustrophobic causing, but there felt like this heavy spirit there. And I remember they took us into the male slave dungeons, and we were there, and I felt there was a smell that 200 years, I believe, after the Cape Coast Castle stopped being in usage, you can still smell this smell. And the tour guide showed us a line on the dungeon floor or on the dungeon wall, and I remember it being sort of this green orangish line, and he said this was the line where the feces of the prisoners was generally around, and it was about 3 feet off the ground. And then he said there was the dungeons themselves were just, the walls were black, dark black, and he turned off the light in there, and he just told us to breathe. And I remember feeling the breath, and with every breath that came, I just started to cry, because I could not imagine the inhumanity of putting people in a place like that. And as we left the dungeon and were led out by the tour guide, I remember we came out into the sunlight, into the courtyard, and I was still sobbing. And I remember both you and Ray putting your hands on me to like kind of support me. And I didn't hear a word that the tour guide was saying after that, but he continued to lead our group, and we came to sort of a long hallway. And this part I do remember him, or I was able to hear, and he said, "This is the doorway at the end of the hallway of no return. When African people came here, these were the last steps they would ever take on African soil." And as we walked down that hallway, I felt every single footstep that I made, and I felt I felt this mixture of anguish and sadness at all the terrible things that happened at this castle, that happened in the transatlantic slave trade, that happened on our own shores in America, to people that looked like me. And we go out this door. I'm still crying very much as we like face this very beautiful ocean side beach. And I turn around, and it was like magic almost, because there's this feeling of poetic triumph, because at the top of the door was the sign that reads "Door of Return." And I realized in that moment that I had fulfilled this journey that my ancestors had been unwillingly taken on, to come back here to the Cape Coast Castle. And I just smiled, because I was like, we did it. we made it back. And I walked back through the door, and I felt this sense of pride and of joy and of happiness just wash over me, because I really just thought, man, I wish they could all see me now.
Yeah.
And the experience still sticks out in my mind, and I think is really well summed up by the quote by Maya Angelou, which is that I am the dream and the hope of the slave. And that was my experience, and it was an experience that I was so unique to that time, to being on semester at sea, to being with you and Ray. And it was something that I will always be sort of in my heart, and which I think had a really huge impact on just myself and my heritage and and my feelings about my heritage and history. And it is, yes, just one of those moments that will always stick with me.
Christian, I just like am so emotional thinking about this incredible journey that you've taken us all on, just to understand what it must have been like to walk through your shoes and also walk through this place. And ew,
Oh, I'm sorry.
gross. It's so gross.
No.
This is me trying to be cute. Everybody who I'm extremely single. No, I'm just kidding. I know. I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, like, I think the responsibility of semester at sea is a lot, right? Like, we all like come into this journey ready to have our worlds turned upside down. But what I really get from everything that you shared just now is that it's not necessarily about having things that we know get flipped on its head, but instead, are we willing to confront and consult things we haven't been willing to otherwise?
Absolutely.
And, we're really lucky in a lot of ways that we've been able to have the experiences that we have, getting to have a taste of what higher education looks like. And also to be inspired by incredible, like, mentors
Yes.
and people who are willing to guide us. But I think something else that semester at sea is able to offer the layperson, which I absolutely identify myself as. You're very special, so I wouldn't put that
No.
pressure on you. But something else that this experience on semester at sea has been able to offer us is Are you willing to ask deeper questions of
Mm.
yourself than what you have experienced beforehand? And if you have faced injustice, to what extent have you faced injustice? And are you willing to interrogate that within yourself? Christian, I think as much as we've talked about pizza and all of the wonderful things that we've shared together, I feel really fortunate because a lot of our conversations have flourished under both of our willingnesses to interrogate our own privileges as both, yes, people of color, as both, yes, a Black man and an Asian woman being representatives of our own community, but also being like, yeah, we were educated under a white privilege standard and we can speak up because we've been given that privilege.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think at the end of the day, I've seen an incredible show from you, Christian, to make it easier for folks to access the communities that we have been privy to, but also to ask hard questions of the people who have gotten us into these places. And so, as we close out, like literally 30 minutes after we have supposed to, sorry, Kate, I want to hear from you, like, as people continue to ask these hard questions of themselves, and as you and I will ask for the rest of our lives until we are little dushes and ashes and like it's just amazing, and we're Christian families and we're gonna be like, oh my god, I'm just like dust to dust, ash to ashes. Uh, what do you what advice can you offer to people as they continue to figure out what they're meant to answer and how they can answer it?
Absolutely. And whoa, that's powerful. Uh,
It's
you
meant for you.
know, oh, I'm sorry.
It's meant for you. I'm spoiled. I get
um,
to ask you it.
yeah. I think the thing that has been the advice that I think was given to me, and that I feel like has helped me flourish in my life, was keep the voyage with you. If you travel on semester at sea, even for a leg, um, I would say that you probably had amazing, powerful, and dare I say, magical experience. Um, and as you go back into your regular life afterwards, whether that's to your regular college classes, whether that's to graduation and starting your career, whether that's to a job, it can be really easy to put all of those experiences, in my case, like Cape Coast Castle, Kranti, even walking across the street in Vietnam, it can be very easy to put those things in the back of your mind and say, well, I just studied abroad, that's it. But I think that there'll be a disservice to yourself to do that. And I have been told also, like, that's a disservice to yourself to do that. So I would say and encourage everyone, think about the things that you saw when you were voyaging. Think about those moments that were breathtaking, and think about those moments that were heartbreaking. And think about those things that were inspiring and beautiful, and take those with you, because they gave you and will continue to give you a unique perspective. And hold on to that spirit, that spirit of adventure and of inquisitiveness and of daring that you had to exercise when you were in ports and when you were sailing the world. And take that with you into your everyday, because that's how you are going to show up in a way that's authentic. That's how you're going to show up in a way that questions the way that things are. And that's how you're going to show up as a person who stands up for others, who stands up for yourself, and who works to make the world better and safer and more caring for everyone. Um, that's a lot. So I think that's my advice.
Oh gosh. It's just like I get to blame them on my allergies or I get to blame them on you being so incredible. I think my decision is easy. You are so spectacular, Christian. And I think As my voice cracks in a million ways, I just want to say I thank you not only for being willing to share your own experiences here tonight, but I thank you for being willing to take that first step onto the voyage, on a place that wasn't necessarily welcome. And I say that in a way that is like not destructive of the program that we became so attuned and so familiar with. That's not their fault, it's not our fault. But your willingness to brave that and to create like relationships beyond it, it makes all the difference, both in my life and everybody else who gets to experience this onward. So I appreciate you. You're so wise and special.
Thank you.
And I'll continue to cry into my pillow as demonstrated here for the rest of tonight. But I appreciate you. Thank you for letting me be a little bit a part of your journey. And I can't wait until like the green book continues to take off further. But Christian, look, you're someone who's going to change a lot of lifetimes in your own. And so I'm glad to play a witness to it. And you have an ally in me. And I'm so grateful to be a part of, like, just to bear witness of the journey that you have.
Oh, thank you so much, Angeline. And
So
I don't know
special.
if I've already said this on this call, but Angeline is an amazing rock star of a person.
No, we're not going to get into
Yes,
this. Okay,
I
okay,
just
okay,
I gotta let me sing my praises for a second.
yeah. I'm such
um,
a I'm like, no, no, no.
Angeline is an absolutely amazing person. Her effect on Semester C as a program, having been the former youth trustee and changing so many processes and having such an influence on the board is amazing. And I personally have been inspired at so many points, and I've asked myself in so many situations, what would Angeline do?
Stop. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Angeline, most of the time, would say, maybe I should just get some McDonald's and just chill out in my stateroom. That I'll be.
Self-care.
Oh, Christian. If nothing else, I hope you learned from this presentation that you should have definitely been born in Texas if you wanted to be anything in your life. No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate everyone who's done like taking the time to talk to us and like listen to our experiences. And Christian, whenever he's the next president of the United States, you'll know what to refer to as in terms of like how did he get here. Clearly, semester C was a little bit of part of it. But most of all, I appreciate Christian for bringing the platform forward, to being willing to speak to everybody, for bringing me along, and for Kate for making this platform an accessible way to communicate for us. This has just been such a special night, and I can't wait until we get to make TikToks and make semester C even more special than it has been.
Absolutely.
But I'm totally teasing, but Christian, you're so special, and I appreciate everything that you've been able to share tonight. And Kate, thanks for making the space for us. I don't know how to stop this. So,
Oh,
unfortunately for all of us, I'm just